Luncheon has been prepared for everyone, where we will hopefully have the opportunity to answer questions and tell you a little bit more about our trip. So we hope that everybody can stay for that. In 1972, Chris Christopherson recorded a song that has been in my head ever since we returned from Haiti. The title of the song is Why Me, Lord? And the opening verse starts with, Why me, Lord? What have I ever done to receive even one of the pleasures I've known? I began thinking about that against the backdrop of where I have been and what I have seen. Here we were, just dropped into a country who for so many years has suffered under the rule of leaders who spent most of their time sucking the lifeblood out of the country, of taking care of themselves first and maybe leaving a little for the general populace. And then, as to add insult to injury, along came the earthquake. The devastation drove people out of the mountains into an already crowded Port-au-Prince to look for shelter, for work, and of course, there was none. Since the earthquake, where were all these people to go? What were they to do? Well, we saw what they did. In many cases, they just sat down. As we traveled every day up and down the mountainside, a trip which took at least an hour each way, we passed people walking. A journey which had to take them a whole lot longer than we took. Or maybe they were able to get into a tap-tap or on the back of a motor scooter to make their journey. All along the way, we saw people sitting by the side of the road selling shoes, dresses, paintings, cane, pills, what might pass for grocery items, chickens, fish, and something that looked like beef. And keep in mind, there was no refrigeration that we could see. And oh yes, the older women selling charcoal, sitting there with their large baskets filled with charcoal and covered in charcoal dust. At a quick glance, they might look like somebody's grandmother, and maybe they were. We were reminded from time to time that there was building going on, and maybe there was. And with all due respect to my friend George, we did see a Best Western being built and under construction in the center of the town, but for the most part, building was hard to find. We would pass cinder blocks neatly piled by the side of the road. Had they just been delivered, or were they sitting there for a month or so? I remember seeing a mason putting the finishing touches on a beautiful entry wall. And in fact, I saw him putting those touches every day we passed. But as we approached the opening in the wall, I looked and there was nothing behind it. Well, maybe it was to be a courtyard for parking cars someday. When we visited the Baptist Mission, they were understandably proud of the work that they had done in building some 150 homes throughout the country. These homes were cinder block shells with roofs, and at least the people were out of the weather. But what are the most basic human needs? Well, if you put in a bathroom, what would you hook it up to? Certainly a cinder block house is a step in the right direction, but it's such a baby step. After all, this is a country in which the trash is scooped up from the side of the road. A country in which the police stand by as the traffic goes unimpeded through intersections without stopping in such a fashion that it would scare to death any Massachusetts driver. And this is a country in which two large, very large hogs foraged for food by the side of the city street without a care of being captured. This is a country which needs to post armed guards at the parking lot entrance to the large grocery store or the local gas station. And yes, even the Baptist Mission was looked after by a very nice man with a very large shotgun. So why be there? On the top of a hill in the middle of the city, next to one of the reported gang strongholds, sits a reason to hope. A place where some 400 children from the surrounding neighborhood came to school, Each little girl with her neat uniform and ribbons in her hair. Each boy dressed in his neat uniform with bright eyes and big smiles. If you weren't there, you might have been in any private school in this country. A place of hope for some 36 older boys and girls, also there for school, but living there with a hope of a future at a local university or maybe the USA. From the moment we arrived, almost instant attachments were made. The little ones wanted to shake hands, fist pump, or just be touched. In some cases, there were hugs as though we had been there for months and not just moments. That didn't stop. Every day we were touched and held on to. Yes, even me. I met a man named Fritz. Our meeting was just casual, but we spoke and shook hands every day after that. He made me feel that for at least that week, I was the most important person in his life. And who knows, maybe I was. The work that we did could have been done anywhere, but I'm sure that newly painted walls, new screens to keep the bugs out, and fans to keep the classrooms cool was much appreciated. But almost of greater importance was the time spent making kites and flying them, decorating small jewelry boxes, playing games, and sharing music. And oh yes, the music. During the last hour of the last day at the orphanage, we experienced something that was truly God. For me, as I was off building things and didn't spend as much time with the kids as others did, this last hour was amazing. There we sat, sharing our music of faith with older kids. We sang Amazing Grace in English, and then one of the boys sang it in Creole as we hummed behind him. We sang, I Have Decided to Follow Jesus, first in Creole and then in English. And even sang our national anthem and the Canadian national anthem, that's a story for another time, for them as they returned the favor, singing for us the Haitian national anthem. Before we left, we all stood and held hands and recited the Lord's Prayer. Then it was time to say goodbye. Well, I don't have to tell you what that looked like. Even when we got to the door, and there was Fritz. And when he realized I wasn't coming back, he dropped what he was doing, came to me and gave me a big hug. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that. We were asked during one of our reflection times, what during the specific day gave you a gush of feeling? Well, I've never been a gusher. And truthfully, I didn't have a moment I could pick out. Well, that moment that gave me a gush of feeling was when that plane's wheels left the pavement and we lifted off to come home. As I looked out and saw the skyline of Haiti becoming a memory, that's when it happened. So why? Were we there just to look at the rubble? Were we there so that we could come home and appreciate what we have and show you pictures? Were we there to make lasting friendships? Where do we go from here? This just can't be a trip that we took to make ourselves feel good. There has to be something more that comes from this, and truth be known, I'm still struggling with that. Would I go back again? Well, I'm not sure. But I certainly want to turn this into something more. Why was I there? Well, I can sum it up this way. On one of our bus trips to the retreat, our bus stopped on the road, as it often did due to the traffic. And standing on the side of the road, closer to the bus than I am to the front pew, was a young girl of maybe the age of a senior in high school. She was just standing there with this blank expression on her face. I stared back at her for a moment, and then I smiled at her, and this big smile came across her face. I'm not sure what I've done to deserve even one of the pleasures I've known, but that smile became the reason why I was in Haiti and why there is still hope.